Okay, guys, well, this is still fresh in my memory. I thought I'd go ahead and make a quick video of what we did in class today so you can refer back to it so you can figure out how it is that you go about doing what you might want to do. I think most of you understand what can be done. It's just a question of how and what buttons do you pick. So we started off by making a project, and it was a color background, and we made it 8 by 11 to be compatible with Snapfish and Shutterfly. And then we went over here and we moved our slider down here on the color wheel until we got somewhere in the gold. And we moved this over to give us a color like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and save that. Remember, I right click and that saves that color. All right. Now to that we applied textures and we used grunge number 7. So I'm going to go and, or that's grunge 07. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Now there's our background that we made. Now after that, what we did is we added a color panel. Now remember, color panels come in up in the upper left hand corner and they're black to start with. So I just zoom it up here a little bit in size, something like that. It doesn't have to be exact yet. And what we did then is they went in and said, okay, while it's selected, remember if it's not selected, you can't get this color wheel, but because there's nothing to change except the background, and you change the background over here under Tools. Recall that we went down to Change Background to change the background, which we could do here, but we're going to leave this background alone. But once you select the color panel, then you go up here to this wheel, color wheel, and you select it. All right, now this is the saved color that we had. Now I'm going to pick a pastel texture as we did in class, and I have to make the color a little bit darker because the pastels don't come through quite as strong as the marbles. So we'll move it up to about here, and let's save that one too while we're at it. So now we've got two colors in our color range that we've saved. But I'm going to go in here and apply a texture, and the texture that we used, as you recall, was ridged or pastel ridged right here. So I'll select that, and now it's going to apply that color to it. All right. That might actually be a little even more than I want. I think I'm going to go back and drop that down a little bit. And let's take it down a little bit. Yeah, that'd be a little bit more favorable, I think. All right. Now the next thing we did is we made that we gave that panel a shadow. So I think I moved it out to somewhere around 4 or 5. I don't remember where it was. Let's put it at 5, and we'll give it a density of somewhere up in 100, 110, something like that. So there, that gives it a shadow. Then I selected the shadow and I went over to Edit, and under Edit, down at the bottom or near the bottom, third from the bottom, you'll see something that says Duplicate the Image. So I did that and it made it. Now notice that it's offset a little bit so you can see that it's there. And after that, I just shrunk it down and made it so that it would fit sort of like this. You know, going to have a gap in between these two panels, and have a little exposure of the background all the way around. Let's size this one a little better while we're at it. Let's bring it down to about like that. There. So now it fits with about an equal background border around it all over. And we'll slide this one over so that background border is maintained there and is kind of maintained there. All right, so we've got the thing now. It's not the same size anymore because we just changed the size of that panel, but that's okay. What we can do is we'll select this guy, then we'll select the smaller panel and say, hey, make it the same height. So it just did that, and you say, and while you're at it, over here in the Align, let's align the tops. Okay, so it just did that. Now if you click off on the background, you'll see that the two panels are the same height with the same alignment top to bottom. Widths are obviously different, but that's okay. So then next after that, now that we've got the panels where we want them and we don't want them to move, I'll select one, and over here in the Layers panel, notice the one that's selected has the green rectangle around it. I'm just going to lock it in place, and then I'm going to select the next one and do the same thing. Here's the green rectangle around that particular layer, and we'll lock it. Now I can't select them. Okay, I can always go back and unlock them, by the way, so if I decide I want to move them later, you could do that. But you don't want to have everything moving around accidentally all the time. So once you're happy with something where it is, it's a pretty good idea to lock it. So now, after that, what we did is under Add and under Pictures, I went into the support files, and I went to the design elements, and we selected these files. I picked the floral cluster, the white flowers, and the white roses. Okay, and we brought them in. Okay, so there they are. They're brought in now. Now, obviously, they're much bigger than we want them to be. So I just grabbed some handles here and shrink them down in size. And let's just place them around sort of where I had them in class for now. We'll worry about the sizing of them in a minute. All right, so I don't want this thing to take up too much room, the cluster. So I rotated it a little bit so that it was not intruding on either of the panels too much. And we set it up there somewhere in that kind of vicinity. Then I moved this little, which I think Andrea said was a dogwood kind of cluster up there. And then we grabbed these roses, and since they happen to be more oriented horizontally, I rotated them around to where they were more oriented toward the vertical, and moved things around so we got them kind of where we wanted them. Right? So that's where we had them. Now to make them stand off the page a little bit, I went in here and I grabbed this and I took it up to a fairly strong shadow. I think it was 10 or so, and maybe 60 or 70. I don't recall what we used exactly, but something like that for the shadows, just so it gives it a little bit of a pop off of the page. Then we went to this guy and matched it, and we went to this guy and matched to the previous again. So now all three of them are shadowed the same way, standing off the page, not with a harsh shadow, but just to give you the impression that it's off the page a little bit. Okay, so now we've got the layout basically, and we went in and grabbed a text box. And in the text box, in my case, what I typed was Mr. and Mrs. And I said, okay, let's pick the font to be Edwardian, the one we put in our into the font panel in the class. And I auto-sized it, so it came up looking something like that. Now you notice I can make this move around. It'll eventually get to the point where it's cutting it off, so you don't want to move it to where it's doing that, but you make it as small as you can so it's not doing that. All right, so there's my Mr. and Mrs., but it's black. So I don't really want it to be black, but remember we saved this color hue, and I want to go really a lot darker. I want to go down into the same hue shade, but darker. So I'll give the Mr. and Mrs. that color. And then when I got it here selected, I'll go over here under Tools. And you could do this, by the way. You could take this Mr. and Mrs. and rotate it by yourself and kind of try to line it up the way you want. But one of the convenient things you can do under Edit is you can go here and go to Set Rotation and say, hey, I want this thing rotated 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise. In this case, because I want it to fit over here reading down, I'm going to go clockwise. All right, so then I just move it over here and set it in place. All right, so there's that. Now I added another picture, which in my case was a picture of my son and daughter-in-law when they got married. In your case, it could be anything you got, but under wedding pictures, I have this picture here of them, and I brought it in. Now, as I said in class, you could have just stopped right here, or you could have, if you wanted, you could have given this thing a border, something like that, and let it sit there. Maybe even give it a shadow if you want. Okay, these are all possible. Anything's possible, so you could have done that and said, okay, there's my layout. That's the way I want it. But I didn't want to do it that way. I took the shadow. Let's take the shadow back off, and let's take the border back off. And what I did then was, one that was selected. Again, you have to select these things to do it. So you select the picture you want the action to go on. Up here under Edit, I went to Cutout and Mask, or Cutout/Mask. That brought up this box is dialog that you can do the working of the masking on. As I mentioned, there's an oval, there's a rectangle, and then there's this amorphous looking button here. And those are the actual masks that come with Scrap Page. And in there, there's all your various possibilities, and we can make tons more of these things, but for right now, we'll just live with what we got here. I selected Mask 6. All right, so I opened Mask 6, and then I just sized it to where I wanted to grab him. Now, yes, it's going to be intruding on him a little bit, but not on his face, just here. So he's going to sort of blend into the background, as will her hand and arm and everything else. So when I apply it, what you'll see is that. All right, so then you size it up to however you want it to fit on the page. And voila, just like that, you're done. So that's the way it's done, and this is the layout that we made in class, and I just thought I'd go over this one time so you could look at this video and repeat it as many times as you want. Now, Gary asked about, what do you do with this thing if you want to save it and everything? Well, you can save the project, as we talked about, which is a good idea if you think you're going to modify it later, or you can save it as a JPEG, and that JPEG can be then placed anywhere you want. Put on Facebook, put on Pinterest, you can put it on Google Photos, or any other place that on the internet that you care to share it with your friends and family. Or once you save it as a JPEG, remember that it was laid out in the format for Shutterfly and Snapfish. It could be the cover or the inside first page of a wedding album. All right, so I thought I'd make that video real quick so you could see how this is done again, and you can play it and stop it anywhere you want along the line if you need a refresher. Okay, so until the next time, this is Dave. I'll talk to you again before class. And I did, by the way, confirm that next week's class is going to be on Thursday at 3:30. So there's what we did today in class, and I'll see you next week, and we'll go over some more stuff. Okay, bye-bye.